Well, welcome back to the World Autism Summit, everybody. And I am so happy to have my dear friend and wonderful person, Dr. Stephen Shore, with us today. Thank you for joining us, Stephen.
No, my pleasure, my honor to be here.
So I'm going to introduce Stephen. Stephen was diagnosed with atypical developmental and strong autistic tendencies and too sick for outpatient treatment. Dr. Shore was recommended for institutionalization. That's so hard to believe. Non-speaking until 4, and with much support from his parents, teachers, wife, and others. Stephen is now a full-time professor at Adelphi University and adjunct at NYU Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development, focusing on aligning best practice and supporting autistic people to lead fulfilling and productive lives. In addition to working with children and talking about life on the autism spectrum, Stephen is an internationally renowned educator, consultant, and author on lifespan issues pertinent to education, relationships, employment, and self-advocacy. His most recent book, College for Students with Disabilities, combines personal stories and research for promoting success in higher education. A current board member of Autism Speaks, the Organization for Autism Research, OAR, American Occupational Therapy Foundation, AOTF, President Emeritus of the Asperger Autism Network, and advisory board member of the Autism Society. Dr. Shore also serves on the boards of numerous other autism-related organizations. Dr. Stephen Shore combines personal, practical, and academic experiences to promote fulfilling and productive lives for autistic and otherwise neurodivergent individuals, and is the rule rather than the exception. Dr. Stephen Shore is also a current board member of the Autism Today Foundation. Welcome, Stephen.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's wonderful having you. And we have some really exciting news to share with everybody.
Oh, please do.
Stephen and I created a program for the School of Rock, and it's to teach the music teachers how to help students that are studying music. So it's called the Notes for the Music Room, and they're now launching that into their programs, and we're just so excited. So we had so much fun doing that over the past year, and we've finally had the permission to share that with everybody. And yeah, that's one of our many journeys that we've been on over the past, I don't know how long we've known each other, maybe 20 years.
Yeah, I was about to say 20 years. It's been a long time.
Because you've been speaking at my conferences. We've traveled to Hawaii and present and swam with dolphins and done a lot of fun, exciting, invigorating things throughout the time I've known you.
Oh, yes. We might say that we've known each other for many a moon.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to ask you what inspired you to be part of the World Autism Summit, and you can tell everybody what you're excited to do in the world. I know you travel lots. Like, how many countries have you been to talk about?
Well, we've got it up to 58 now.
Holy guacamole.
It's a lot of countries. There's 140 or so left, depending upon how you count them. So there's more to go. And what I find fascinating about traveling to different countries, a couple of things come to mind. One is wherever I go, even in the poorest lands that are devoid of resources, I almost always find one or more pockets, sometimes very small pockets of near best practice. And how does this best practice occur? It comes from parents who decide they need to set up a program for their kids.
Oh, good.
And so maybe there's 2, 3, or 4 of the children there. One or more of the parents do their research. Perhaps they scout out a conference somewhere, either online or in person. And using duct tape and glue and plywood and nails, they put together a program. And some of them these programs grow to be incredibly large, international in stature. And some examples that come to mind are the Child with Future that comes out of Ukraine. We must also put in there Autism Today, founded by a parent of an autistic child. And it's the biggest, the biggest and most well-known and successful organizations always seem to be started by a parent, usually the mother, often the parents, both of them are in on it, and occasionally the father as well. And I just find that very interesting, whether we're looking at Autism Society of America, Autism Speaks, well, Grandparents for Autism Speaks, and as I mentioned, Autism Today, and many others around the world.
That is interesting. Yeah, I never really, I guess that is true. It's that passion, it's that drive that, it makes it really a very, very important thing to do. You do anything you possibly can for your children. And the family is so important to that child. It's not just the child, it's everything. That whole infrastructure that's so important to hold that child and make sure that their lives turn out well.
Yeah, it really is. The family is primary. The parents are the experts on their children. And on my journeys around the world, what I've also found is that autistic people are the same wherever you go. And expanding that, parents are the same as well. They want the best for their children. And likewise, educators and other professionals. What is the difference from place to place? That often comes down to availability of information, of good information about autism and resources.
How do you hope to make the biggest impact in the world around autism?
Making the biggest impact, I believe, can be done by showing the world that the potential of autistic individuals is unlimited, just like it is for everybody else. And I think it goes back to parents, my parents, who, when I was struck with the regressive autism bomb at 18 months, as you said in the introduction, and it took them a whole year to find a place for diagnosis. And when they did, finally at 2.5, because there was so little known about autism. And also, as you said, I was recommended for institutionalization. However, my parents realized that no, this was not the way it was going to go. And they convinced the school to take me in about a year. And it was during that year that my parents implemented what we would today refer to as an intensive home-based early intervention program. And this was a program that emphasized music, movement, sensory integration, narration, imitation. And it probably looked like one of the more developmental cognitive or relational approaches that we see today, such as Miller method or floor time or RDI, and many aspects of daily life therapy as well. Now, that's just today's terminology that I'm using that my parents did at a time when even the concept of early intervention didn't even exist. And I think what it was is that it was just parents desperately trying to reach their child. And they were going to try any means possible. I think the philosophy also was very important, as they accepted me for who I was. Yet at the same time, they realized that there was a lot of hard work that needed to be done if I were to lead a fulfilling and productive life.
I know there's so many conversations around different methodologies and treatments that there are for autism. Can you talk about, what types of different treatments there are? I know, there's just so many.
Oh, there's so many. And we're getting into my initial research with my dissertation. And what I found is that there were a number of well-known approaches and well thought out approaches being used. And people who are involved in their approaches promoted them as the approach, the best approach.
Mhm.
And that makes sense. If I develop approach, naturally I'm going to be biased to my own approach.
Right.
However, what I found missing was awareness of other approaches and the realization that due to the great diversity that we find within the autism spectrum, that's going to suggest that different approaches will help different individuals.
Right.
And my research, the goal of my research in this area is to move the conversation to how do we match reasoned approaches to individual profiles.
Hmm.
And so we take from the different approaches that already exist. Applied behavior analysis, for example, the study of modifying behavior, and understanding behavior and why people act the way they do. And I think the greatest gift that they've given us, the ABA folks, is the concept of the functional behavior assessment. Because you really have to understand why the person is doing what they're doing if you're going to do anything about it. So the child who's wigging out in class, we need to find out why. And for example, maybe it's a sensory issue and it has to do with the lighting. And no matter what we do to address the issue, we're not going to be successful until we find out, oh, it's the lighting. Maybe we need to provide an accommodation, change the lighting, provide a baseball cap, or whatever it might be. Then we can work on modifying the behavior if needed. Teach is another approach, training and education of autistic and communication handicapped children. And that was developed in North Carolina, University of North Carolina, I believe. And they were the first approach to focus on the strengths of autistic individuals. And if you look at the introduction of their initial book, you'll see them talking about needing to know the culture of autism. What are the characteristics? And then working with these characteristics. And by combining behavioral, cognitive, and other types of philosophies, they put together their program. And then we have daily life therapy, which we find at the Boston Higashi School. And this approach originated from Japan, where if you go there, you'll find what I call the mothership, the Musashino Higashi Gakuen, which is known just outside of Tokyo as being a 2,500 student elite private regular education school. And there's a long waiting list to get in, and it's expensive. However, into the uninitiated eye, everything looks great, as any quality school would be. However, if one of us were to go, any of us who are familiar with autism, what you'd notice is that about 30% of the students are autistic. And they're included and taught with everybody else. So that makes for one unique factor about daily life therapy, is that it's the only approach that's used for regular education and autistic education. The others are specifically for children with special needs, autism or otherwise. So I find that fascinating.
That is.
And it's just good education. As we move along towards the more developmental approaches, we now come to the Miller method. And with the Miller method, the focus or the question that practitioners ask is, how does the autistic person perceive the environment? And by understanding how the autistic person perceives and thinks, cognitive about the environment, then interventions and strategies can be developed to help the individual close developmental gains. Then there's floor time, DIR, developmental individual relationship, something or other. Nobody can remember it, just call it floor time. DIR, floor time. And like the Miller method, it is developmental in nature. Where is the child developmentally? But practitioners there ask, how does that person relate to others? So it's a relational, developmental, relational. You take DIR, you put it in a blender, you change the order of the letters around RDI, and now you have relational development intervention developed by Stephen Goodstein and Rochelle Shealy. And this is also developmental, relational in nature. And with this one, though, the focus is on developing dynamic intelligence, dynamic social intelligence by serving as, by creating a guiding relationship with the individual. So really working with the autistic person. And there's also CERTs, social communication, emotional regulation, transactional supports, developed by, now his name slipped my mind. But we'll get there. Anyways, developmental, Barry Prezant, that's it. Yeah, by Barry Prezant and a bunch of other people too. And with CERTs, the idea is not to develop a whole new approach, but to give a thorough evaluation of the child and use existing approaches to provide for whatever that child needs support in. So in summary, those are the big 6 or 7 approaches. There's many others. There's variations that can be found within these approaches. And the question is not what is the best approach, but what is the best approach for this child at this time?
Right.
One of my goals in my teaching is to familiarize my students with these different approaches and help them understand that different approaches will help with different children. And just like autistic children, so will practitioners graduate or gravitate to particular approaches. So I'll have students tell me they really like Miller method and that's the direction they want to go in. Others will say ABA really fits their philosophy and so on. Others will combine approaches. I like this from this approach and I like that from some other approach, so I'm going to combine them. And the idea is become a specialist in 1 or 2 approaches that really fit your philosophy. However, have enough awareness to realize when it's maybe time to make a referral to a practitioner of a different approach, because that person might have what the student needs.
Right. That's like a horse of a different color, right?
Yeah, it definitely is a horse from a different garage.
We certainly put a lot of those approaches in the official Autism 101 manual too. So, just to have a variety so people could pick and choose what's going to work for their own child. And we use those approaches also in the School of Rock, some of the bits and pieces.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So that was really helpful. And I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that sharing and that overview. That was, really very good.
No, thank you.
So, yeah. And so now what I'd like to know is about employment, like your area of understanding and what you talk about with regarding employment.
Oh, well, everybody's got to work for a living, and that includes autistic individuals. So briefly, looking at my employment history, starting with actually pre-employment. And I think it's important to set the stage for employment with chores around the house. Chores around the house. And why is that? Because just like a job, you have to do them on a regular basis. They tend to be cyclical. You have to make the bed every day, feed the dog every day, walk the dog, clean the cat litter, take out the trash, or whatever these particular tasks may be. And if the individual is unable to complete the whole task, let's just start with a tiny little piece, such as putting the pillow where it belongs on the bed or taking the can of cat food and putting it on the counter. And if that's all the person can do for now, sure, let's do it. And then chain together the other bits of the task until we get to the whole task. you also have to do these tasks whether you like it or not. So that, like employment, you have to do it. So from there, we can go on to kid-sized jobs. I had a paper route, which was an excellent and complete business in miniature, kid size. That worked very well for me. And what we add on to these characteristics that I mentioned of repetition, having to achieve a certain proficiency, doing it whether you like it or not, now you add in what I call customer service. In other words, you have to do it well enough so that the customer keeps you or you don't get fired, and that the person wants you to come back to mow their lawn or to continue delivering their newspaper. Although newspapers now seem to be delivered electronically, so there isn't much in the way of newspaper routes anymore. But there's other kid-sized jobs that can be looked at as the child enters middle school and into high school. So that sets the stage for employment. It's also important to be culturally relevant in this area. So, for example, if I go to the Middle East, I can talk about chores all I want. However, it's somebody else who makes the bed, cleans the floor, feeds the cat or the dog, and so on. So it means we have to find something else that can substitute for these tasks. And that's also important. That's important too. So as I travel around the world, I have to be careful that I don't take my very United States, Western centric experiences and ideas. And certainly it's fine to share them with people, but also realize that there may be aspects that are not relevant, and to work with people in these other cultures and lands to develop what is cultural for you. That's something that Robert Nassif, a colleague, and I put a lot of emphasis on as we developed a 40-hour train the trainer curriculum for the Qatari government, who is working very hard on on inclusive employment practices for their neurodiverse population. So anyways, back to my situation. My first formal job was working in a busy restaurant, cleaning tables. Way too much sensory input, all this clatter and people and so on. It just didn't work at all. So I knew I had to do something else. And I thought, well, what do I like to do? Bicycles was another interest of mine. And I got it to a point where I could take a bicycle apart down to the ball bearings and put that back together again. No pieces were left over, and it worked, often better than when I started. So I got on my bicycle that I built from the ground up and made the rounds of all the bike shops in the area, about 12 of them. I'd find the manager and I'd nerd out on my bicycle with the manager of the shop. And then after a period of time, I'd ask for a job. And by the time I asked for a job, the manager would know that I knew my way around a bicycle. And what I realized that I was doing was that I was using the portfolio method of finding a job, sidestepping all of the hidden curriculum, unspoken rules of a formal interview. How many times do you pump out the interviewer's hand when you shake their hand? How much eye contact do you make? Who sits down first? All that stuff that us autistic people can learn. But if we're so busy thinking about these rules, how much is left to talk about the job? So it took me about 12 times. And on that 12th time, I did get hired at a bicycle shop. And now I can manage my sensory input by working in the back of the shop, fixing bicycles, which was a great interest of mine. Or I could come out to the front and perseverate about bicycles to whoever walked in. And I think the owner of the shop called that selling bicycles. So that is how employment started. Then it was off to college, off to university. Fixing bicycles was a great way to earn money, much better than the usual work-study jobs, being a security guard or working in the dining commons. From there, it was off to working in a bank as an accountant.
Hmm.
Because in addition to my music bachelor's degree, I got an accounting degree, and accounting seemed to be a very interesting way to study business by looking at all the transactions. However, accountants and I didn't really get along.
Hmm.
So I morphed over to teaching music and
Hmm.
getting a master's in music
Nice.
and teaching music and also business courses because I was familiar with that as well. And so for quite a time, I was jumping around between different colleges and universities and finishing schools, teaching a wide variety of courses. It could be math, it could be statistics, it could be music appreciation, it could be brass techniques for music educators, whatever it was. I'd go around teaching. And then from there, it was continuing my education onto my doctoral program in special education and writing my books. The first one being Beyond the Wall, which is my autobiography.
Mhm.
The second one, Ask and Tell, Self-Advocacy and Disclosure for individuals on the autism spectrum. And that's when conferences started.
Right.
One conference, and then what I'd find is if I spoke at one conference, 2 or 3 other people would ask me to speak at their conference.
Mhm.
It just kind of grew organically.
That's how we started.
Yeah. And I remember one day you called me on the phone. Who is this Karen? Karen calling me. Autism Today. What is that? Well, I don't know, but they seem to want me to speak at a conference. Okay, I guess I'll come. And I think it was one of those panic situations where probably a speaker canceled out on you
Ron, yeah.
at last minute. And could I come and fill in like 12 days from now or something like that?
Mhm.
And I've done that in other situations as well. So yeah, and that's where we started.
That's
So
right.
that became my job, speaking at conferences and being a student, finishing my doctoral degree. And so by the time I finished, I was speaking at so many conferences that when I applied to Adelphi University, shortly after finishing my doctoral program, I realized that I had so many conferences lined up around the world, 2 around the world trips worth of conferences, and then some, that I would have had to start my first semester away from school more than I was at school. And I didn't think that was a good way to start. And in those days, we didn't have Zoom and we didn't use video conferencing for teachers, for education. So these days, I probably could have worked it out as I do teach my courses on Zoom from all around the world
Mhm.
and to all around the world. And so I had to postpone my start date for a semester.
Mm.
And then from there, it was for the past 14 years, serving as a professor of special education at Adelphi University and continuing my research, transitioning over to participatory research in mental health related issues for autistic individuals and continuing my travel.
Now I
And
know something that we had in common is that we both love to travel.
yeah, we did. Yeah,
You
we certainly
invited me to go
not
to
did. We
India.
do. Yeah.
You invited me to go to India with you recently, and how was that trip? What did you
Well,
guys
that was an amazing trip. We were in Trivandrum, about as far south as you can go before you end up in the water,
do?
in the Indian Ocean. And it was monsoon season.
Mhm.
And there was this magician there who had developed a huge center for people with disabilities.
Hmm.
And he's doing some amazing work. And it was good to eat Indian food from India as well.
You always like the food.
Oh, yes.
And so you taught about employment there, or you taught, or what did
I
you?
talked about employment. I talked about what I call the 4 A's of autism. That's awareness, acceptance, appreciation, and action.
Mhm.
I talked about hidden curriculum or all the unspoken rules. I think I got sensory issues in there as well.
Just get it all in.
I just get it all in.
All in. I'm always so mesmerized by you, and I never even watch the time.
Well, we
You,
always have a great time together.
I know we do. Did you want to briefly cover the four A's?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea.
Okay,
So the four A's of autism, um, which were initially the three A's. So we'll start with the three A's because they're still there. And then it seemed necessary to add a fourth A as I was with friends and colleagues in Ukraine, speaking at a conference there. And so the idea kind of came to all of us at once for that fourth A.
And
So the first A is awareness. Autism Today and so many organizations have been working at awareness to a point where the CDC has gone from a prevalence rate of 1 in 10,000 when I was diagnosed and going through grade school to now recognizing a prevalence rate of 1 in 36. That's a lot of autism. And what it means to the average school teacher is that if you don't have an autistic child in this class, the numbers are going to catch up with you and you'll have one in the next class. That's why we need to know more about it, or at least one reason. So now we recognize autism at home, in school, in employment, in the community, and increasing numbers of autistic people wondering, well, gee whiz, am I autistic? Reading about it, giving themselves a sort of informal diagnosis, and then getting that validated by more formal means. And what all of this awareness does is build a solid foundation for the next step, which is acceptance. And acceptance means that you work with the characteristics, you work with the strengths, the abilities. And it's transitioning away from what I call a deficit model to an abilities-based model. And it means we need to ask the question, what can the autistic person do? Mm-hmm. So if we have a grade school child, for example, who is having difficulty and has little motivation to do math, commonly what happens is it starts with a interest inventory. What is the child like? Oh, they like using a computerized flight simulator. Now we have a powerful reinforcer. And often a program will be set up where if the child wants to regain access to the favorite activity that they live for, you got to meet your goals in math. However, I consider that as a deficit way of thinking about autism. It's working against the characteristics to work with and accept the characteristics of autism, one of them being highly focused interests and passions. What I see more educators doing now is finding a way to teach math through using a flight simulator. There's a lot of math in flying airplanes.
Yeah.
And now math becomes intrinsically reinforcing. And the child eventually learns that they can even get better at using a flight simulator by understanding math. So that's acceptance. Acceptance comes appreciation. And that's where autistic people are valued for what we contribute to society. We started seeing this on a grand scale with the large IT companies, Microsoft, Apple, SAP, and others, that actively would seek autistic individuals because they know many of us can engage in computerized geekery at levels that nobody else can. However, my question always is that while this type of work is very good and should be publicized, and it is publicized, well, what about everybody else? What about those of us who have skills in other areas, such as Matt Savage in jazz, or literacy, or gymnastics, or whatever it might be? We need to find gainful employment for these individuals. And then also with everybody else, what about those of us who need more support in communication, social interaction, managing schedule, travel, whatever it is? And when I think about supporting these individuals, there's a fellow in Florida I know who likes to do nothing more than pull laundry out of a dryer and fold it perfectly.
Mm.
He does it very quickly. So that's one of his, as the DSM would call it, restricted interests. But that's a deficit model. So let's just call it a passion or deep interest. He loves to fold laundry. And I'm sure all the listeners here, or at least many of the listeners here, would like somebody to help them with their laundry. And maybe some of you have people helping you with your laundry. And this autistic person would be the first one on a plane to come out to help you with your laundry. However, you'd have to pay him because this is his job. And he spends all day in a hot laundromat, folding perfectly, faster, better, and more enthusiastically than anybody else because this is something he really likes to do. And that's an example of employment for someone who maybe needs more supports.
Mm.
So we've talked about the first 3 A's of autism: awareness, acceptance, and appreciation. And there I was in Ukraine maybe 5 years ago, and we're talking about these 3 A's. And one of my friends, might have been Bill Peters, who's out in Azerbaijan running a center, House of Dreams, for autistic individuals. It might have been Ira Sergienko, who directs the Child with Future program that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Maybe it just came to all of us at once. It's really unknown, but they deserve credit in the development of the 4th A, which is action.
Mm.
And action is the glue in the work that we all put into making those 3 first A's coming together.
That's wonderful. That's a great, great story.
Thanks.
That's great. Wow. So I'm ready to get on a plane right now.
Oh, yeah. Let's go. The next trip may be to Bahrain.
And where is that?
That's slightly to the left of Qatar.
Ah, now you were talking earlier about Qatar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're teaching different classes there, or teaching?
Yeah, well, my colleague and I developed, Robert Nassif and I, were asked by the Qatari government to develop a 40-hour train the trainer curriculum
Mm.
that has 8 modules. So we developed and went over there and delivered it to them
Mm.
to help with their efforts for inclusive employment of their neurodiverse population.
Oh,
Well, that's very exciting because they're eager to learn and they're eager to do things to support autistic and otherwise neurodivergent individuals.
and it's probably looking very different than what it looks like over here.
Yeah, I think they're doing a better job, actually.
Yeah, it sounds very
They're
fast.
really going at it.
They're going at it.
In the United Arab Emirates, there's surprisingly good work being done. Maybe not to the people there, but to us, because we don't hear much about what's going on. And that just goes back to my findings that wherever I go, there are going to be pockets, some bigger, some smaller, of best practice or near best practice.
And yeah, that's what we're trying to do in this whole summit is, share resources and understand what's going on in the world so we can make the world a better place for everybody.
Exactly.
Maybe we can, understand some of what's going on there, bring it here. We can, help other people in places that aren't so fortunate, in other countries that are really struggling with things, with challenges too. So that's my vision of what I'd like to see happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. There's a lot of autistic people in the world, and I believe we can help them lead fulfilling and productive lives.
I do too. Do you have any other final words that you want to share with our wonderful audience here?
Well, I think a good thing to keep in mind is the incredible diversity that we find within the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that the diversity within the autism spectrum is greater than outside of the spectrum. And it's hard to say. I'm probably biased and probably blinded by spending most of my time within the spectrum. I spend 100% of my time in the spectrum, but most of my time interacting with and working with people who are either autistic or closely doing a lot of work with autistic individuals. So that's why I often say, when you've met one autistic individual, you've met one autistic individual.
Right. That's really, really true. So thank you so much, Stephen. You've been,
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
I don't want to say goodbye ever.
No, well, we'll be together again soon
I know.
in real life.
I know. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay. Thank you.